All right. Gloria in excelsis Deo. Welcome. Welcome, beautiful soul. Beautiful souls. Thank you for joining me. Woo. So, how's everyone feeling? Uh, Things have been a bit chaotic, I think, for most people of late. Primarily, I think that many of us were confronted with many very challenging things. Um, if you haven't been, then that's great. That's wonderful news. But I'd like to suggest that it's also wonderful news if you were challenged and have learned a lot about yourself through this sort of experience. I apologize if there's some noise outside. It looks like there's some people doing some work and doing things as humans tend to do. But so today we're going to talk about a couple different things, and I really appreciate you taking the time. As always, just to discern for yourself what makes sense for you and discard anything that doesn't make sense or doesn't seem to resonate as true. This is just some of the downloads that I've received from the Galactic Confederation and Ka primarily today. So today I wasn't really speaking with the council at all. This was just stuff that the Galactic Confederation said that we should discuss today. And I'm actually really liking doing these kind of videos where I just tune into what they feel like is interesting to discuss and see what they offer, see what comes through. That's a kind of a different way than how I've kind of done it in the past a little bit. So it's a good way, I think, for me to just sort of keep myself out of it a little bit. Like it takes a lot of pressure off me, honestly. I'm sure you can imagine as a content creator or something, like you want to make sure you have ideas to keep making stuff. Or some people might feel some anxiety about that. And so in this situation, I actually don't really have to worry too much about like ideas running out because there's always going to be something new and kind of amazing going on, more or less, to talk about. So we're going to talk about integrating and balancing to become the way. This is like what I like to call being the way, or being the prayer, being the word. This is being truth, embodying truth. And so this is a challenging place to go to. Good morning, Joe. Thanks for tuning in. This is a challenging place to go to because in order for us to actually do that, it means that we have to be able to recognize and new sub, woo, party, Mars Deloon. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for joining us. We tend to have these situations arise where we are our egoic sense of self or our identity gets afraid and then actually acts in a bunch of fear, right? We get scared and we freak out a little, right? And so in order for us to actually be the way, it means literally that we're attempting to try not to do that anymore, right? And I think that people kind of get that okay, yeah, I want to be less reactive. I want to feel peace. That's really my goal. And then in addition to that, a lot of us feel called to want to express that peace or expand that peace to others or to bring others joy or help of some kind. A lot of times we'll feel called to like get involved in helping them in areas that we found the most challenging, which is actually why I talk about the reality so much, because I found the reality itself to be the most challenging thing about being here. The vibration, the inconsistency, and the insanity of the egoic mind did not feel right to me, right? So that was the hardest thing for me, was understanding what is actually going on here. Like, none of this makes any sense to me. And so because that seeking of like, I don't know what this is the hardest thing for me, is like, I don't feel like I'm a part of this reality, yet I'm clearly here, a part of this reality. So how do I cope with that, right? How do I process that and move beyond that and transcend that so that I'm not feeling like somehow limited or somehow like this is an issue, that somehow who I am is influenced by the world, right? And that's easier said than done. So that's kind of what the integration of sort of the way is. So we all have, like, they were saying, we all have, we tend to have like a bias towards particular types of principles, like spiritual or divine principles. Like, these would be the divine truths that I would call them. These are things like compassion, love, equality or unity, truth, wisdom, grace, mercy, peace, forgiveness. These are the cores. I think that's pretty much them all. There might be a couple that I missed, but those are like the core principles of what we tend to realize makes us, is more aligned with probably how we would presume would be ideal for us to show up, ideal for most people to show up. And we can also see that if everyone can show up that way all the time, then there's really nothing to ever even worry about as far as conflict goes. But in order for that to actually happen, we all have to kind of also trust each other, that even if we forget a little bit and act out a little bit, that we'll come back to ourselves and remember ourselves, right? In order for the violence and the conflict actually between us as a society to actually stop, we all have to decide to lay down the swords and trust the other one's not going to pick their sword back up when your back is turned, right? We have to kind of get to a place where that's understandable and that makes sense for us, and that we can feel that that's okay. Either that, or we have to get to a place where we know it doesn't matter what they do. Would be the place where Jesus got to, where he, to the physical death, right? I'm not even going to defend my body, right? And that's not for everyone. I'm just saying that there are degrees of this, and both individually and in a society. Thanks, Munchat. Thank you. So grateful. Yeah, Tassel and I have been sort of we stepped away from the stream of truth. Both of us were feeling some troubles arising in it, and so we've taken a hiatus from it, and we're just assessing it. So we're actually probably going to talk about that today, me and her, to try to, we want to make sure that what we're doing like feels right for both of us. That's all. And we really like all the stuff we've made. It's not that we don't. It's more just that there's some bumps that are happening. It's hard because we're in a relationship, right? Being in a relationship and working together this way is really challenging, as I'm sure you can imagine. But I think it's all going to be perfect. I'm not worried about it. But I am looking forward to seeing what we're doing in the future. As far as the next sort of topic goes, we're coming into like this pushing of the envelope between like finding new balances of our spiritual and divine principles while still integrating with humanity and other people that may not follow those principles, right? Like your family members or people you work with or whatever, they may not be into those things, right? They may not think peace is the way. They may think that forgiveness is weak. They may think that in order to be powerful, one has to be fearful, right? So in all things, there is these sort of balancing opportunities, really. And so one of the ways that they showed me this was timing. So I think most of us know that time is sort of a perception. It's not quite real the way that we perceive it to be. Some of us have had an experience of that as like that infinite now moment. But others of us cognitively go, yeah, okay, I can see that. Like I understand a bit of the quantum stuff. I can see how you're explaining this. I haven't experienced timelessness, but I can kind of get it. And then others of us are like, this is nonsense. But I think most people that are on this path that are going to be tuning into this content are primarily aware that time is not quite real the way we've perceived it to be. So now when we're in the world, and I really don't see time that much. I try to like, this is where the challenge comes. I try to, because the world does very clearly see time. And in order for me to try to be harmonious with them, it makes sense for me to try to openly participate in the systems that help them feel comfortable when they engage with me, right? So I try to see it as just a responsibility that I have to just try to be where I am. Those of you who've watched the stream or know me will know that I say a wizard arrives precisely when he means to. You know, that is a quote from a movie or from a book, but it's not, it's true. It's true. Divine timing. It's everyone arrives precisely when they are meant to. Always. You can't be late for anything. It's not real. So, now that I have that position, if somebody feels like I've been late for something, is it fair of me to go, that's not real? Your feelings are invalid. I don't believe you. I don't participate in your illusion, right? Like, there's an opportunity to be that way. Of course. I don't have to participate in anything. I mean, I clearly don't have to participate if I don't want to. But of course, what I'm just offering, I guess, or what they were showing me is that it's opportunity to try to harmonize with just people that are just seeing things differently. They're not seeing things wrong. They are seeing a reality that's not totally true. But the purpose of that falsity that is being lived in is in order to eventually see the truth, right? So it serves its purpose that way. It also is a very, very useful and opportunistic thing to have time. Time is what allows us to experience story and causality the way we do. So we can be grateful for people who like time. We can be grateful for being involved with time. We can be grateful for being able to dip our toes into time if it suits us. And simply recognize that the other person, they may still be really into time, right? Like, time might be a really big thing for them. It might be really, it might give them lots of anxiety when things aren't going to the right timing. Now, of course, there's also then opportunity to say, like, to let them know, I actually am not late, and here's why. And that's the route that I go. And that's why I don't have many friends, right? That's why people don't talk to me that much. That's why people don't, because I refuse to pretend that I was late. I'm not going to pretend that I was late. I will say, I'll try to do better, and I'll say those types of things. And I will try to do better. But, it's, I'm not going to pretend that I was late. And I'm not going to pretend that I didn't care about their feelings, because that's not true either. I'm not going to pretend any of that stuff was happening. All that happened was I was attempting to do as I meant to do, and I arrived at the time I arrived. And people don't like that. They don't like that. And they don't have to like that. And I don't have to care if they don't like it, right? And I don't. So it's not like we're unloving to just hold firm to our principles, but we don't necessarily either have to get up on that hill and defend the principle. Like, just because somebody thinks that I've been late or somehow been inappropriate in some way, doesn't mean I actually have to defend myself either. That's what they were sort of showing me. To maintain the balance, you don't necessarily actually have to defend yourself. You can just sort of say how you see it, like, if you want to, or you can let them if they're getting super upset with you and they just can't seem to be okay that you're just not someone who adheres to time the way they do. Like, there's opportunity for them to accept you too. If they don't want to accept what you are, and this applies to any of the principles, any of them, time, peace, and any of these principles that just are really, really important. If they don't accept that that's who you are, then, they're not accepting the services that you're trying to offer them. Basically, you're trying to help them. You're trying to create a relationship with them and have some experiences together, whatever those are, whatever the dynamic is. And that's service. That's serving each other. And they are saying, I don't like your service this way. When you show up late, I experience emotion, and that is not fair to me. And I would say, that their emotion is their responsibility. You have compassion for it because you understand how it feels to be kind of feeling let down and whatever it is, anxious. You understand that. But that doesn't mean you did anything wrong either. It just means that they have kind of judged the situation. And so as we step out of these, paradoxes or paradigms that we've resolved, like time, for example, the more and more separation in ourselves we dissolve, and we start to realize where all that is. So there's no sides to things anymore. There's no polarity here. They like time and are in time doing the time stuff, and I'm not so much seeing it, and it's perfectly fine. It's perfectly fine exactly how it is. There's nothing wrong here. So both people, it's also, just as it's fine that they got upset at you, it's also fine that you maybe got annoyed that they got upset at you. But then you can release all that and just say, we're both fine. There's no problem here. But, I'll try to do my best to be ways that are a little bit comfortable for people. I'll do my, my duty, which is just to, have a respect, a healthy honoring and respect and compassion. If you're in alignment with love and truth and compassion and peace, you're not trying to be hurtful and disharmonious to people. If they interpret your behavior that way, there's been confusion on their end, primarily, right? Because you're not trying to tell them or show them what they're experiencing. They're seeing that because they've had some wounding of some kind. And it's not necessarily your responsibility to fix that for them. And so this happens in any of the principles. And then that's why we start to tend to usually kind of come in a little bit and pull into ourselves more and separate a bit from people while we're going through the more cocoon phases, I guess, of our awakening. Sometimes we go back and forth, in and out. Everyone's a little different, but it becomes really challenging when let's say I'm always showing up in peace and somebody else seems to be just always trying to point fingers and talk about something that they perceive as wrong. So I love the person, let's say, and they're just kind of maybe they make me feel drained. So this is just a hypothetical. I'm not talking about anybody, but let's just pretend that there's a person that just sort of makes me feel drained. They're so miserable all the time. And I love them. I care about them. They're a friend of mine, but every time I'm hanging out with them, it's just the same thing over and over again. And I've tried giving advice. I've tried all these different things. I don't know what to do here. So the opportunity is just to love them as they are, right? But there's also an opportunity to respect that you deserve to have good experiences also. And that, you're not, just as you've noticed, you're trying to help them out of a state. You're not able to help people out of states like that the way you would think. You would think that if I just say the right thing, then they'll feel better. And that can temporarily put little band-aids on things, of course. But if they, if they're in that state and they're not really paying attention, they're still in a fear narrative. They're not really listening, right? So you have to just be okay with how they are. If they're miserable, it doesn't have to actually be draining. So you're getting invited to learn how to be around that type of person, to love them anyway, and to not find that draining. It doesn't have to be draining, I promise. It doesn't have to be. It feels draining when it's bugging us somehow, right? Like when we're like, this is kind of blah, but that's because we're judging it, right? We're judging it as not appropriate somehow. And it has to be appropriate. It must be appropriate. You are in accordance with it. If it's in your experience now, you have manifested this. There's no other way for it to be. So it must be appropriate. So that's where we're trying to correct the idea that something's wrong somewhere. Like, that's what we're really trying to let go of. The idea that something somewhere is wrong. And I know it feels bad. Lots of stuff feels bad. So it's kind of like confusing, right? Because we navigate this world where things feel bad, and when something feels bad, the animalistic part of us goes, this is wrong. Like, this is not good. Be afraid of this because it wants to protect itself, right? I'm just going to have a quick look at the chat. Participation in the dream, playing our part, but not forcing. That's what I'm figuring out. Yes. Yeah. You know, you're a dream character, and some people are still asleep and dreaming and stuff. And you realize that everyone's already wide awake. The universe is wide awake constantly. But the egoic part of them that's primarily running the vehicle is not like who they are really. And, you know, you can join them in these experiences as like just pretending, basically. Yeah, I just pretend. Not in a way of lying or deceiving. But like, there's no reason to not, like, for example, I don't really feel so much like Sean anymore, right? And I think a lot of people can probably relate to that a little bit. I don't feel so much like Sean anymore. That doesn't mean that I go tell people that I'm not Sean. I'm all that is, and I just constantly tell them that. I could do that. I could do that, but that people are going to find that challenging to have a relationship with a nobody, right? So if we want to have relationships, and we don't have to, we like that's the whole thing, and the whole point of everything that they were sort of saying is we have to start to notice, what do we actually want? Like, do we want these relationships? You know, that's why I don't have any, because I don't want them. They are just, you know, and I do have them. I do have relationships, but they're not, I wouldn't frame them like normal friendships. I don't have those the way that I used to, or the way that most people tend to. I have like a couple people that are very close that occasionally we talk, but not daily, not weekly, not monthly. And I prefer it this way because I think, and they do too, I think, actually, because all of us need this space, I think. Why was I talking about that? Oh, because long-term goals, like, do you want to constantly try to deal with the lessons of karma and stuff? Like, you'll get to a place where you're just like, I don't know if, like, I want to do this with these people, some of them, anymore. Like, it's becoming a bit too much of an effort to pretend to, like, a lot of people kind of want you to feel bad and be in their kind of pain with them, and, you know, tell them, like, help validate how bad it is. It kind of is what they're looking for a lot of times. And that doesn't feel very good to do that for people. It feels like a lie. It feels like you're deceiving them. Why wouldn't I just tell you that you're beautiful, a loving, innocent soul who is divine? This stuff you're saying simply isn't true. Eventually, you just, you know, you have to take a stance somewhere. You're going to take a stance. Like, you're either going to be like, fine, okay, you know, I'll put some energy into, like, just pretending, and, like, because I want to be compassionate. I want them to feel heard. You know, But to me, like, I feel more compassionate being like, that's nonsense. That's nonsense. That the stuff you're saying is nonsense. This is not true. Don't talk about yourself like this. Why are you talking about yourself like this? That's what I'd like to say. I think that's compassion. I love you. You should love you. What are you doing? What are you doing to yourself? That's how I see it. But when I actually do that, they feel not valid. They feel not heard. They don't feel the compassion most of the time, right? And so it's just sort of like we don't actually need to try to correct their state is part of it, right? We don't need to correct their, like, if they're not happy with something, that's okay. That's what it is. They're not happy with it. Whatever it is, it's fine. We don't have to tell them anything. We don't have to act at all. We can literally just say, thank you for sharing. That sounds like it's challenging for you, right? Like that's all true. It sounds like it's challenging for you right now. We don't have to get all involved in things. And if we do that, though, some people who are more oriented to trying to battle it out a bit might really feel like hurt by that as well, because now they're going to feel like you don't care about them. They're going to take it personally that way. It's not that you don't care about them. It's that this thing isn't real and you don't know how to participate in it, right? But they're going to perceive it as, like, if they're having some insecurity or something, they're going to perceive that as like, oh, he or she just doesn't care about how I feel. And there's not that much you can actually do about it all. That's what I'm trying to get at, is you have to just sort of learn where your bias is, where your balance is, and then try to participate as authentically as you can within the parameters that feel most aligned for you. And then integrate with people and build relationships. And, I would recommend that you don't hide at all what you believe. However, you bring it up only if it seems like almost like required somehow, like they're asking for it, basically, or they're like talking about all the problems that they're having, and then they're like, what do you think I should do, or something. Then you can offer your stuff. But the problem is that most people are very, very tightly wound up in some of the stories that they have, and they're sensitive to these things, and it's delicate work to actually do these things. And like, do you want to be a therapist for people? Is that like what you want to do for people? Or do you want to like make music and serve them that way? Or do you want to paint stuff? Like, you don't have to heal people, a lot of us get stuck like being like, oh, I have to heal people. I have to do that. Because that's what our soul kind of craved, was sort of healing. It was really just craving remembrance, recognition of itself. So then we can feel called to help other people recognize themselves, because we remember what it was like when we didn't realize what we were and how much more pain we had, how much more deadened we felt, etc., or anxiety, fear, whatever it is. Living in the drama. In terms of yin and yang, there needs to be more yin. I believe at the moment, thank you for joining, E, by the way. At the moment, I believe our role, since we have awareness, is to help balance and bridge the yin and yang. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. This spirit, like, we have the higher principles, the higher truths that guide us into what we're doing, and as divinity emerges through us. And people are doing a whole bunch of stuff in the human level. There's a human, or you could call it, some people might call it 3D. I don't like to make it hierarchical that way. But the spirit, or there is a higher truth, right? So while you're in the human experience seems to be true. Like, ostensibly, It seems that I'm a separate person. I have a whole bunch of stuff going on and an identity and all these things, until I realize I don't. That's not what's happening at all. And so it's like ostensibly true. It all appears true. So for the person that's in the middle of it, it couldn't be anything but true. They can't wrap their head around that yet. Not until they're ready to, and then they'll pursue that, when they're ready. So we want to align our principles just to try to show up and like peacefully accept that, yeah, they are upset right now, and that's okay. And I don't have to let it disturb me, really. There's this empathy kind of toxicity, really, that we put on ourselves. We blame ourselves for everything around us. Someone's upset and it has something to do with us somehow, and then we immediately feel guilty and shameful and all this other stuff. It's nonsense. It's nonsense. Our conscience will tell us, like, yeah, there's some truth here. You didn't behave very nicely. Whatever. We'll be aware. But all of the shaming isn't necessary. And so we stop doing that, but then other people kind of want to keep going on with it. And we're just kind of invited, yeah, like, do we want to do that with them? And if we do, how do we want to do that with them? And if you speak your truth and be authentic, you're gonna find people they just disappear. Basically, they just stop trying to do that, because excuse me, they're not getting the energy that they're trying to get out of it. They're trying to get sympathy and compassion and all these things, and they think compassion looks like this, sympathy looks like this, and then because you're like, no, all is perfect, you're okay, everything's okay, they're like, this is not sympathy, this is not compassion, and then they get all agitated, right? And this happens in so many different ways. I'm not trying to blame them at all. That's sort of the whole point, is that you too, I'm sure you can remember, have been in states where, like, even I don't believe in time. If somebody's like super late for something, I might go, oh, blah, blah, blah. Like, just compulsion, like ego thought arises, right? I'm not immune to it. It comes up and goes, they're late. Look what they don't care about you. They're late. And I just go, no, I mean, they're not late. That's nonsense, right? So I do that. Other people don't know that. They don't realize time's nonsense that way. Not nonsense, but it doesn't work the way they think it. They didn't get to choose to be on time or not on time. It doesn't work that way. But they don't understand that, and that's okay. So, it's all good. It's all good, right? But if they can't do the same thing, and they can't just be okay with how you are, that's where eventually, there comes a time where you just kind of have to say, I'm not going to conflict with this anymore. Like, I'm not going to defend myself. I'm not going to do anything. I'm just not in it anymore. And that's, like I said, we want to balance that perspective of, like, the human's going through something. It's very real to the human. The emotions are very real. It's all very, very, very real, very real. But then it's not. And so we can live where it's not actually real, but we can still really honor and deeply respect where they are because we've been there. Doesn't mean that we have to say anything specific or validate them there. In fact, I actually think that validating them there, unless you're saying, I have been there too, I've been there too, and here's what I've found, that this is not real. Like, that's the closest, you validate it that way maybe. But if you're telling them that, yeah, be afraid, things suck, all that, then yeah, that sucks. Your life sucks. That sounds horrible. That sounds horrible. Your life sounds horrible. Oh my gosh. Like, you're lying to them. First of all, you're lying to them. Second of all, they're actually going, yeah, see, he gets it, she gets it. It's not helpful, I don't think, right? I wouldn't consider that to be a helpful thing. That's like if a little girl comes up to you and says, the kids at school called me fat. Like she's 3 or 4 or something. Kids at school call me fat. Like, you're not going to be like, oh yeah, you're disgusting. Like, you're just, like you don't affirm nonsense for people. But for some reason, adults seem to think, like, at least this has been my experience, they seem to think that, like, if you don't agree, if I think something shitty about myself and you don't agree with it, then you are being mean to me. I don't think so. I don't think that's how it works. I think it's the opposite of that. I think you're being mean to yourself, and I think I'm trying to tell you that. And that realization, though, when the self realizes it's the one doing it to itself, is confronting, it's challenging, it's like, it's hard. So we have to remember, like, when we saw some of these things, probably we went through some of the most challenging things of our life, and then we saw this, right? Like, so they're maybe just not there yet, and it's totally fine. Yeah, I used to try to force learnings on people too, Mud Chat. I used to a little bit, like, because, and even still now, I can get carried away because, the part of me that's just like, oh my God, this person's talking nonsense. Like, I just want to tell them, I want to tell them. So I try to do it as compassionately as I can, as respectfully as I can, but no matter how hard I try to be compassionate and respectful, it's usually not heard or received that way. It's just usually not, in my experience. I've been trying to make that, like, perfect. And I think what I've realized is that if you just answer when you're asked, that's the best way to ensure that you have the best chance of not causing conflicts with people. And then I started to realize that even that, though, why am I even worried about these conflicts? There's not a conflict for me. They have a conflict. And, that's up to them. I don't want a conflict, but I'm not gonna, so, and that can sound really narcissistic too. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody was like, oh, that sounds really narcissistic. And I mean, it could be definitely interpreted that way. But that would imply that, like, I'm obligated to do certain things, to be certain ways for people. Like, that if I'm not expressing certain ways and talking certain ways, that I'm just not good enough. And then I'm narcissistically refusing to help or something. But that's not what's happening. That's not what's going on. I'm just not, if you don't like me, right, then that's okay, right? That's fine. It doesn't have to be, there doesn't have to be animosity. There doesn't have to be a problem. Power versus force. Yeah. Empaths, dark and light, narcissists suck energy. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Well, that is why there's dark and light. Totally. And, we all are narcissists to a degree as well. It's very important. Very, very important that we recognize that like, a narcissist is not any different from an empath. They're no different at all. The only difference is their orientation to the narratives that they've established in their life. And they've established a narrative in fear and responding to fear with control. Whereas the empath has also constructed their life, typically, if they're with the narcissistic, that thing, around fear, and is also trying to correct that fear through control. But in the empath's case, it's through usually trying to like heal the narcissist in a way, like to help love them so that they can like feel better about themselves. That's one of the draws that happen. It's not this simple, and it's unique. Everything's unique. But there's no difference. There's not two people here. There's one being here engaging with itself. And both individuals have narcissistic tendencies. Both of them have open, loving tendencies. They both are very unique, complex beings. They both have feelings. And they both have responded to trauma differently. And differently to enough of a degree that they are a perfect harmonious match for catalyst, for lessons, for evolution out of the trauma. That's why those relationships happen, is to heal past the trauma that formed the need for the codependency. So you can thank them, and the narcissist probably thinks you're a narcissist, almost guaranteed. They tend to presume that everyone sees the world that way, and actually everyone does, primarily. When they're looking through the ego is primarily always first concerned with the self and how anything affects the self. Like, so even like if somebody was like, I'm going to be really good today, like I'm going to make sure I do a good deed every day so that and I'm going to make a journal of it, all the good deeds I do every day. Like, they're trying to prove to themselves they're a good person. It has nothing to do with doing the good deed in that type of scenario. The ego doesn't know how to do good for doing good's sake. The ego only knows how to try to get stuff, power, fame, whatever, abundance of some kind. That's all it's trying to do. It doesn't care. It's, that doesn't mean that every person that donates is doing it from their ego. I just mean that when the ego is the one doing it, it doesn't care. And the way we can tell if it's the ego is pretty much just by examining ourselves, self-examination, and being honest with ourselves. But because the ego is always acting in that way and never ever acting in the interest of others, really, unless it perceives that other as crucial to its survival somehow. Like if it associates that other, like maybe their baby, for example, they might associate as being like part of them directly, and any threat to that is threat to myself directly. So those associations happen also in the ego. So we just want to be respectful of the idea that both people are doing crappy things to each other. So like, for example, in a narcissistic or empathic relationship, and I know these well, I've spoken to so many people, clients. I'm an empath. Like I totally get it. It's the reason I can speak to it at this level is because of my experience with it. So that's all I'll say. And it doesn't have to resonate, but the empathic person is seeing something wrong in the narcissist, right? That means they're judging the narcissist person, the person they're claiming is a narcissist, which is a label and not true anyway. They're a divine being that's become a little bit confused and now is displaying narcissistic behavior tendencies, behavior patterning. That's what's happened. So if we call them a narcissist, it really reduces them to this selfish, whatever, like it really reduces them. That's not what they are. That's not what they are in truth. So we don't have to look at them like that. And we are looking at them like that. Therefore, there's conflict. We're trying to, and then we try to heal them. We wonder why they can't do better. We whatever. Why can't we do better? Right? We should show them how to be peaceful, love ourselves, and to extend that love freely without being scared of them, scared of other people. Like that's how we serve them. That is the way to be the way, right? Which we were talking about a little bit earlier. And we don't realize that usually. In that actual karmic dynamic, we don't realize that we're just being invited to love them anyway. It doesn't mean we have to keep participating in it. Like I said, it's what stories do we want to play in, right? What things do we want to, what principles are really important to us? What principles are we okay, like if other people are kind of bending them and breaking them, are we okay to be around while they do that? Or does that really get us upset? If it gets us really upset, then we want to look at that. And we want to try to see if we can forgive and let go of this so that we can be at peace. But if it makes us that upset, it's also probably an indication that we maybe want to step away from it a little bit to get a better understanding of ourselves around this thing. Right? Why am I so upset by this? Because if we're upset by it, it means we feel threatened somehow. And that's an indicator for some work to be done on ourselves. It doesn't mean we have to stick around it. It doesn't mean anything. It just means we now go, wow, that really freaked me out. I need to really figure out what that was. And then take whatever space we need. But ideally, we don't feel the need to take space. You know? Like, ideally, we feel okay. Things are happening, stuff's going on, and we feel okay. That's right? I think that's the ideal. That we're okay, things are going on, we're responding to them as lovingly as we know how, and that's, I think, our goal. But in order to do that, the universe will confront us with like, can you do that in this situation? What about this situation? What about this one? And then, these tests are arranged by ourselves. So we can't hold on to all the pain. Like we can hold on to the pain, but we shouldn't probably hold on to the pain that we felt and blame the people. It's the universe and ourselves that decided to show it to us this way, Sorry, I'm just reading chat here. Maybe the key is having peace with the way any situation turns out, with any outcome. Yes. Acknowledging yourself, but also, like you said, also acknowledging yourself. You have to be honest with yourself about like what is appropriate and true for you and what you want to experience. And you also, you want to actually let go of outcome. There is no outcome other than love. That's the outcome. So the rest of it is drama or, something. You get to a place where there's nothing to expect of them. That's the ideal place. That just innately humans here, physical human beings, have sort of varying capacities to access their deep awareness and presence. Some of them are very, very aware, very present, and behaving from love and integrity, and some of them aren't. That's just what's going on, right? As far as how people are behaving. So we don't expect anyone to consistently do anything because we're not labeling them as a good person, a bad person, a high vibe person, a low vibe person, a whatever person. We never know what they're going to do and never even try to presume. We're not even thinking about it. We don't even consider it. There's nothing to consider. They'll just do whatever they do, really. That's where we get to. And when we get to these places, our mind really frees up and we start to get really expansive in our thinking and really aligned into thinking about essence and principle instead of like the very particular little things. Oh, they said that word and then I said this word and that, all the details, we get to a place where like it's all of that stuff is fear, and it really isn't real. We get to a place we realize, okay, it truly isn't real. We've all heard that, like, fear is not real. Fear is false evidence appearing real. Lots of us have heard these things, and it's very true. Darkness is merely a descriptor of light, because there is no such thing as darkness. You can't shine darkness onto something. There's only light. So nothingness doesn't exist. Fear doesn't exist. The darkness doesn't exist. It's just a way for us to notice a lack of light. A perceived lack of light, I should say. Because all the light's there. The light's there. It's just a perception. It's just a perception. The light's right there. So in full power and full infinite potentiation, the creator is there, holy and divine, at whatever you're looking at. It doesn't matter. So anything that is not suggesting that is not true. And that means, whoa, everything that is conflict oriented is not true. Whoa, right? The conflict can be played in and created and generated, but it's a pretend. It's pretend. That's what it means to wake up out of the dream. You realize you don't have to pretend in the dream. You don't have to do the things. You don't have to do the conflicts. And a lot of people will just not want to talk to you because you don't want to engage in these things. Probably. And that's okay. That's okay. You'll find people, and like I have, that are just more in alignment with what you believe and your principles, and they're more interested in that type of thing. They're more interested in these things. It's not all doom and gloom. The reason the people fall away is because they don't resonate anymore. It just doesn't doesn't serve us. We've learned what we needed to learn from it, and now we're just kind of like, I'm a little tired of some of this. We don't want to be judgmental about it. We just want to be honest. Like, is this long term? Is this like, I don't know what they're going to do. Maybe part of me wants them to like stop some of the projection or stop some of the whatever, blaming some of the whatever it is. But are they truly actually going to do that? Do they seem even interested in doing that? And also, can I even discern how they seem truly? Do I know anything about what they're doing at all? No. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what they're learning. It's just not for me to say. So if they fall away from the relationship and disappear, then, see you later. Forgive them. It's hard. It's hard. I don't know how else to say that. I make it sound simple. I say these things as if they're nothing, right? They don't like it, and you've been with someone for 20 years and then they decide they hate you and disappear. Let them. I mean, what else are you going to do but let them? There's nothing else to do. They decided to leave. It hurts, and then they're gone. And then it's perfect, and then it's great. And then you end up eventually being thankful. Eventually. We're always eventually thankful for whatever we perceive to have lost. We end up being grateful eventually that we ended up finding from whatever the experience was. It's always the same. That's why the path always ends in the light. It always ends in love. There's no other way for it to end. It just depends how long we want to hang on to like some of the stories. And this is how we like really heal our energy body, is by like letting go a lot of these stories, holding higher vibrations, and being the change. We just start to be like aligned with divinity, and when people are not wanting that, then we don't have to be around them, really. And I say that, and some people I'm sure have some situations. They're like, I don't know how to not be around this person. And then if that's the case, then you should be around them, right? Like, if there's nowhere, if you can't not be around them, or you have no way, you can't fathom any way to not be around them that is reasonable for you, then that's the universe saying, yeah, I mean, you're around them. You're going to be around them. So accept it, right? And figure it out, right? What else are you going to do? That's kind of the point. What else are you going to do? But try to remember divine perfection, remember faith, remember that we're learning lessons, remember that some of the lessons suck. It's okay. And actually, they only suck for a period. After the lesson's finished, they don't suck. It's seen as literally perfect, so perfect you would not have even tried to change anything at all about it, or ever suggest anything should have been different at all in any way. That's how perfect it becomes. There's no more, I wish I would have, or I should have done, or they should have, or it's a shame that languaging and all that conceptualization around what seemed to have occurred is gone. And so we don't have to rush that process. It's just literally about just really trying to pay attention to some of these things if we're uncomfortable in some of the situations. And because that's what they were talking to me about primarily, is that people are getting really uncomfortable, like trying to walk the tightrope of like the 3D people that are engaged in duality primarily, and then people that are not, and trying to do that in a way that's harmonious and beneficial to all. And some of what they were showing me, and some of what I've seen, is that some of it is sort of being a bit of a battle type position, like a confrontational type position of like, look, I want to help them change. That's confrontational. To want to help someone change implies that you know what's best for them. Unless they've asked you to help them change. And even then, your goal should just be to offer what you feel you can offer. What they do, who knows, right? Who knows what they're going to do with it? You can tell somebody the truth and they can just ignore you. So if I say you're the universe, you're all that is, there's never been a problem and everything's perfect, most of us don't see that. Most of us don't agree. That's nice, Sean. That's nice sentiment. I get it. That's the higher truth. I get it. But it doesn't feel like that. So, I get it, but I honor my human experience. It doesn't feel that way. But that's the truth. The truth is true. So, it doesn't become helpful for us usually to try to convince people of truth. We actually sort of end up creating a situation where they dig in further into the lies. They start to commit more to the lie. So yeah, we're humans having a human experience, but that's not who we are. So no, your human experience does not discern whether you're having a good time or a bad time, or like, you're not the body. It's not what you are. So, we can honor where people are at, but we don't have to believe them. We don't have to question them either, though, right? We don't have to. We can if we want to, by all means. I'm never telling anyone what to do. I hope it never seems that way. I'm always just telling people to do whatever they want. But, that's the point. That's the whole point. Freedom of sovereignty to do as you please, while operating under what I would say are divine principles of like peace, mercy, forgiveness, love, right? Not righteousness and justice. Leave justice and vengeance to the universe Let the universe sort itself out. That's how it's built. It's built to sort itself out. Every perspective everyone has is valid and real for them, and yes, everyone is valid and relevant. Exactly. Yes, what they're talking about might be not true. It might be fear, it might be a lie. But they believe it right now. They believe it. And I'm sure you can remember when you believed a lie and how hard it might be if somebody was telling you that you're just wrong, right? Like, it's hard sometimes when people are like, you're wrong, though. It's hard sometimes. It's hard to be the person that says, yeah, but you're wrong, though. That's the person I am, and it's not always perfect. But like I said, it is perfect. It's served my learning so well because I almost do it automatically. And then I'm like, shit, I shouldn't have said that, right? I shouldn't have done that. They're going to be sad now. And then I feel bad. I get guilty or whatever, right? And then if it gets really bad, I might blame them. Oh, they made me feel guilty because they got upset, and I'm upset now, though. I got upset. Who cares what they're doing? Who cares? People do stuff. There's like, until people are acting primarily out of integrity, there's like literally almost no rhyme or reason to what people are doing. There's no sensible reason. It's insane. Most of the populace is actually kind of doing. Eckhart Tolle talks about it quite a bit, about the collective insanity of the ego. So there's no point really in like trying to figure out what it's doing or why it's doing it, unless you're actually wanting to teach it or to really examine it like I do. We're better off usually just kind of recognizing, oh yeah, the ego's insane. I forgot. The ego thinks we're separate beings. The ego thinks that we're limited just to the body. The ego thinks that in order to live, one must have the body. The ego believes that when this body dies, that's it. The ego also believes that it is God, though it doesn't usually say that outright, because that would trigger us to go, oh, that doesn't make sense. So when we're engaging with ego and seeing it in the world, we can just give it a wave. Hello. Welcome, right? It's okay. It's okay. It can be really annoying. Like it can be really, really annoying because you get to a place usually where you're like, I feel like I could connect with people. I feel like they don't want to connect. Like they want to complain sometimes, right? And then I'm kind of like, it's not connecting. This is you trying to like leech sympathy. This is leeching, vampiric type behavior. Not that I'm judging it, but that's what it is. It is what it is. And, I don't really want to do that. I don't want to sustain you that way. If you're into energy work, you'll know this. You'll feel this. They're trying to take your energy. They're trying to, right? And they're not doing it because they're bad people. Again, they don't know how to do that in themselves around this situation. So they're trying to figure out other people to help them. Like they're just afraid, right? There's nothing wrong. But yeah, we're just going to be called because we're going to feel like garbage if we don't pay attention to these things. We're going to feel like absolute zombies, just garbage if we don't pay attention to this. Our vibration will dip so low and we'll be so confused and disoriented. We won't be able to feel our guidance. The more and more of this stuff we participate in while also feeling bad about it, basically, will hold us into these low frequencies and it'll make us feel like we're asleep again, basically, is what happens. And the contrast of our divine self and open eyes to our slumbering state is so huge that we may feel a lot of like, oh my God, I don't want to even be here anymore. A lot of that, because the contrast is so deep. The chasm between the two of pure love of all things and being all things to like forgetting all of that. You've seen too much of what you are, probably, is the way to look at it. So now the more you forget, you're like, oh my God, I can't keep forgetting, right? And so that's what they wanted me to really get down to, was that's the big thing. I can't keep forgetting myself. There's a book I used to read called The Dark Tower by Stephen King. And I don't know what it is, something about this phrase, but it really reminds me, and it may not resonate for others, but I always say I want to remember the face of my father. There's a character named Roland, and it was a saying that he would say when he was trying to say, basically, I want to act virtuously. I want to act in alignment with grace and the highest truth. And if I don't do that, all that's happened is I've forgotten the face of my father. I've forgotten my divinity, is how I see that. And the goal just becomes to like kind of not forget as much. Right? Remember to remember. Yeah, mud chat. Remember to remember. Exactly. Remember to remember. I'm going to try and remember. I used to say that to people. And then one guy finally, he fixed it. Like, I used to say, oh yeah, I'll try to remember that. So I don't know what to tell people. I was forgetting stuff all the time. And then one guy I was working with, he's like, you're going to try to remember something? Like, how do you do that? How would you even do that? What's your method to do that? And I said, yeah, you're right. I guess I'm just saying that. I'm just saying things. I'm not going to try to do anything. I'm either going to remember stuff or I'm not. I can write it down. I can do whatever I want. But I will either think of it, it will occur to me, and I'll recall it, or I won't. Right? What's there to do? Right? But we have these kind of realizations, and I'm not sure why I'm talking about that exactly. Why was I saying that? Oh, remembering to remember. That's why. Yeah, remembering to remember. That is what we're doing. We're just recognizing what we truly are, and then trying to remember that, even when we start to forget. And the only way to really do that is really simple. We just really try to pay attention to the moment. Like, oh, my feelings are coming up. Stuff's going on. Like, we can let go of the specifics, the details. Like, the details of all this stuff, not super important. What's really important is like how I'm feeling. How am I feeling? I feel really bad. Why? Right? Like, that's what's important. Not, they did this, I did this, blah, blah, blah. That stuff's it's just not relevant, really. I mean, it serves a purpose. It serves its purpose, which is to inform an experience of moment to moment to moment, to create a narrative that allowed you to look at yourself. So that's what it was for. But all those moments, okay, now that I experienced it, I can just be like, how did I feel about all that? And what were my thoughts that were going through my head as well while I was acting? Can I recall? What was I thinking when I was acting? Like, blah. A lot of time we're not really thinking that much. We'll notice that we're just acting out. We're just freaking out. We're not thinking really, right? So that's really all we're being invited to do. We have it's almost like they said, you have a new system, right? And you're getting more and more and more information, always more. Expect that to always be getting more information, more experience, more awareness, right? So in order to continue to expand, we have to, when we get to a certain place, we're going to say, ooh, I don't like that though. Like, that's enough. And we'll wait there until we're comfortable to go, okay, I accept it. And then we move past that. That's how this constantly goes. It's always acceptance and surrender. Always. There's nothing else to do. And And so the question is just what level of resistance do we have to that? And then trying to really consider, like, how do we want to show up for other people? How do we want to show up for ourselves? And I think most people would say, like, I'm a kind person, I would say. Fairly, like, if you call me a person, I'm pretty kind to people generally. But I will not lie as best as I can. I don't lie at all. And because of that, you know, people don't necessarily like what I have to say all the time, because I'll tell them that what they believe in is not real. And that's a hard thing for people to hear. So on my side, I'm really trying to learn how to be okay that, you know, I've chosen to be in this role where, like, people don't necessarily want to hear what I'm saying all the time. Like, and they shouldn't. I shouldn't expect them to. Right? Like, why would I expect everyone to want to hear everything I say? Like, it's pretty silly when we look at these expectations. This is the ego, and this is why we look at these things, is like, why do I even think anyone would want to hear me? Right? Why do I presume any of that? Like, it makes no sense. You know, so we can, like, let go of a lot of it, just all the stuff. But the more we keep getting honest within first, the faster we get. Yes, the faster, linearly. I like that you said linearly, faster, right? We can't actually speed that process up. It doesn't, we're not able to do anything faster, but yeah, but that is the goal, though. We want to be as honest as we can. Usually our barrier to being honest is literally just that we're afraid of how much it's going to hurt to see ourselves. Like, if I honestly go, yeah, I did that literally to hurt that person as much as I could, that's what I did, right? That hurts to look at yourself and notice that, if you've ever done that. One time I was 14 years old and I wrote a song. This guy that I knew in high school bugged me so much and kept dating my ex-girlfriends right after I would. There was this little rivalry going on. And I took it way too far, and I wrote a song about him that basically, it was like totally bullying. I didn't even think of it as bullying at the time. I was just pissed, and I wrote a song about him, and it was mean. It wasn't like, it wasn't telling anyone to hurt him or do anything crazy, but it was just mean. It was mean. And I had to, like, really, like, later in my life, I had to be like, oh my God, like, look what I did to this guy. Why? Because he, like, dated some people I dated, and, like, he used to talk shit about me to other people, and then they'd tell me about it. That's why I did this. Like, all I was trying to do was hurt his feelings. I was just trying to hurt his feelings. And I was like, I have a band, I have a show, I'm going to play in front of the whole school, and I'll just play this song about him. That's going to hurt his feelings. Right? That's what I did. It feels terrible. Right? It doesn't feel terrible for me anymore because I've forgiven it of myself, and let go of all of that. But we have to realize that sometimes when we're talking to people, we're actually asking them to be honest with themselves prior to their readiness, right? They're not necessarily ready to pull that Band-Aid off yet, right? They're waiting for it to stop bleeding first, maybe, you know? So, and then, you know, we can also remember that, yeah, Mudchat, like you just said, you've done it too. You've done all the things too, right? That's why you're almost ready or are readying to ascend. You wouldn't be here learning from this channel if you're not old, most likely. You would not at all care. So, yeah, you've done all of it. So we get to a place where we just kind of realize that and feel that deeply, and then we go, okay, I've done all of it. I've done all of it. I forgive myself. If I've done it all, then why don't I just stop participating in some of it? Because I don't need to do more. Certainly, you know, and the more we forget ourselves, the more likely it is that we'll do something else that karmically like cause these little tangles. And then, you know, the way they showed it to me was it's almost like we get offered this flat sheet. We go through these cycles of almost like awakenings, pops. The sheet gets smoothed out and flat. We feel great. And then we start to roll around in it and like mess it up and cause crinkles in our state, in our consciousness. And then the new light comes in and we smooth that all out again. And what we're trying to do is not ruffle it all up so much. These waves of light cycles that are coming in, that they're showing me, is like this constant wave that has varying levels of intensity and comes in these cycles to help us cleanse and purify. And so we can utilize these energies that are coming in just by literally forgiving ourselves, letting go of all this crap that, like, there's no problem. So just, you know, there's no problem. Honor how we feel. Honor how we feel, but we don't have to feel that there's a problem with how we feel, right? Like, that's the whole point. So I'm never saying repress feelings. It's really, really important people don't repress feelings, because this makes all of this the opposite of what I'm saying. If we repress feelings, it makes more crinkles, right? So every time a crinkle happens, we want to immediately go, oh, a crinkle. Let's just smooth that out. We don't need the crinkle, right? We want to keep a tidy energy body, a tidy environment for us to live in, really, right? And we do that just by learning how to forgive and dynamically move through these things day by day or moment by moment. Yes. Hi, Debbie. Hi. Thank you for joining. Yeah. Exactly. You can create art garden from there. You're just doing whatever you feel like, and it's fine. Like, isn't that amazing? Like, wouldn't that just be amazing to just do what you feel like doing and it's fine? That's achievable. You can do that. I promise. You gotta, like, let yourself off the hook for all this crap. When you're ready. That's the thing, right? So even when I'm talking about this stuff, like, please don't feel like I'm suggesting that how anyone feels is not okay. It's always okay. It's always exactly what's needed. It's always the really important things that are coming up to look at. That's why it feels so bad. It's always perfect. So we're just trying to, like, constantly remind ourselves of that. And remembering we're human. That's the last thing, and then I'll take off. But remembering that we are human, like, an aspect of what we are is a human vehicle, a human body, you know, and we're in this world, we're here. So there's no need to fight it. You know, we don't have to fight the way the world is. We just have to start to go, okay, I'm going to choose what I want to create here. With all I can choose is really my life. Everyone else's life is theirs. I'll choose mine. I'll try to do my best, and I'll be okay. And that's where we're at now. That's like the pulse. Like, it's okay. It's like the message, the main message. It's all okay. If people are being ridiculous with you, don't worry about it. Just let it go. You'll feel better about it. I promise. Once you just forgive it and be like, you know, just maybe it's not the time for us to be close to each other. I thought it was. Maybe I really wanted it to be, but it seems like it's not. So Thank you, everyone. Yes, I hereby give any and all permission slip to be artists. An artist, yeah. An art, just create, do whatever you want. But you'll probably find, yeah, that if you're creating something or directly helping people in some way, you're probably going to feel the best. But if you're helping people in some way, you're probably going to also want the help to feel meaningful somehow to you. But yeah, this is what we're trying to kind of be asked to do, is like take stock of what we actually care about. What do we want to even do? I've not been thinking about that properly lately, and they made me realize, like, I don't actually have like a goal really of what I'm doing. I'm not trying to do anything. I have no idea what I'm doing. And so that's why this came through for me anyway. It was like, they're like, you should probably figure out what you're doing. And then I'm like, but who is the doer? And they're like, yeah, but you're there doing stuff, right? You're here doing stuff. Are you not? So what stuff is it? What's the stuff going to be? Right? So I realized that, I got so non-doership that I just didn't even really go too much into like, what am I going to actually do and why and that stuff, So what do you want to do? I promise that if you do it, you'll probably have a lot of fun. You'll probably feel like a lot of fun. Maybe it doesn't bring you money. Who knows? Maybe it does, but it's probably going to feel really good. And the more you do that and bring the high vibration, the more everything just changes, and the universe just gives everything, to you. You cannot possibly need anything. It's not possible. So I know it seems, I know it can seem, people talk about, they might say something like starvation or something. Yeah. And those are, again, karma, stories, learning, evolution is what that is. And it's not to dismiss it or minimize it at all. It's just to say that when someone is hungry, and if you have food to offer them, you offer it to them. If you can and you want to, right? But you're not responsible for all of it. Like, you didn't make them do that as a soul. They've chosen whatever they're doing. They've chosen to experience this way. The human may be very miserable and very, upset or whatever, and not at all aware that it chose, but it did. It did. It doesn't matter if it's aware or not. It did choose. And that doesn't always feel good, to know that we chose these horrible things for ourselves, or like, we can all cite the worst things in the world. But it's always the same thing, that we chose it. We chose it. Even if we think it's insane and we wouldn't. We did. So it's just the way the universe works. Not unfortunately, but fortunately, in fact, fortunately, the universe chose. If this was not the case, this would mean that we were being punished and things like that. Which, thank all the holies that that's not the case. Can you imagine a dictator type God? That would be horrible. Right? That would be horrible. That would be horrible. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for all the chat. I loved all of it. It was amazing. I enjoy all of it and love all your faces. Thank you so much for hanging out, and hope it resonated. Again, if things don't make sense or don't resonate, just throw them away. I do invite you to consider my perspectives. I remember, I know who I am, and I know who you are. Only because I know who I am. And I try my best to say the truth. And sometimes it doesn't feel great, though. So I apologize in advance if anything I said didn't feel great. And I really appreciate you. And I'm thinking I'll probably go live tomorrow as well. I'm going to try to do this actually every day. And I've said that so many times on the channel, so many times. But I'm actually going to try to do that. I'm going to try to get like a routine. Like, that's part of the thing, is like coming back to earth a little, is what they were showing me, is like, do you want to do this YouTube stuff thing, or Do you want to do this, or like what are you doing? It's sort of how they showed it. Like you're not consistent. Like sometimes you're in, sometimes you're just blah, right? So I'm like, yeah, you know, I don't know what I want. I don't know what's going on. I just want to feel better. I feel pretty good now though. So I'm getting to a place now where I feel like, okay, I think I'm actually ready to teach. And that's part of it. Is I was indecisive until I was ready to more teach specifically what I wanted to, my own curriculum that sort of comes through me. I wasn't ready to do that yet, so I felt indecisive about it all. That's what indecisiveness is. It's just you not trusting yourself, right? Basically, if we're really honest, we have something we would prefer, but we're doubting ourselves, so we're not sure if we should do that or not. It's almost always like that. We don't have to doubt ourselves. We can just decide to do the thing that we would prefer to do and just cross our fingers. Leave it to God, right? Let Jesus take the wheel. Whatever people say, right? Just let go and let God. See what happens. But just trust that it's going to be fine. And it probably will be. Actually, it will be, I should say. Always an absolute pleasure. Thank you, thank you, thank you. A million blessings. And we'll talk to you soon. Take care, everyone.